Today, we want to talk about what does it take to cut through the corrosiveness of silence inside of our organisations, whether we are conscious of it or whether we agree or disagree with its present, whether we like it or not. Now, today I want to explore what does the silence cause, what's its impact, and how do you recognise it? Have you ever heard these words come out of someone's mouth? I could have told you that. Has anyone ever said that to you and you just want to throttle them? Right? Or I wish, after they've told you, you want to go, I wish you'd told me that before. Yeah? Because I would have made a different decision. Raise your hand. Have you heard anything like that? You just want to go, don't do this to me. Yeah, very frustrating. I've said this to myself many times. I wish you'd told me that before. Until I had this wonderful woman who worked with me over 30 years ago. Some of you have heard me talk about her. Maybe she was that moment in time when I decided to do something different. Rose Kalesha gave me a piece of advice that changed my life. Some of you have heard me talk about her in previous webinars. What I haven't told you before is what she actually said to me. And her words, as I remember them, went something like this. You don't listen. You lead from my way or the highway. People don't even come and tell you anything because they know they'll be dismissed. Why am I telling you this? Is because the culture that I set up in that organisation guaranteed its failure. What does it take to build a culture where people speak to you and tell you what you need to know, give you the information that you require, or you live inside of the corrosiveness of silence and things come as a surprise? Before we go into how do you correct this, let's really deepen our understanding of the problem. Now, why am I going to do that? So you get really uncomfortable and then maybe you'll do something different in the future. And maybe some of you don't have a Rose in your life. I did. That person changed my life. Today, I want you to get really uncomfortable. What is it that you're missing? And how does it come to you later? We've worked with enough businesses to know that silence is happening in every organisation that we have worked in. Do you know where it is happening in yours? Do you know how to recognise it? As you know, for those of you who have been here before, we're going to send you to breakout rooms. And in your breakout rooms, we're going to discuss certain questions. For your first one, if you haven't already introduced yourself to your group, tell them your name, your location, and what company you're with. And your first question is, what is silence and how do you know that it is happening? So what is silence and how do you know that it is happening? Off you go to your breakout rooms. Welcome back. So what is silence and how do you know it's happening? How do we look at the corrosiveness that's going on inside of our businesses and how do we cause it? First, let's look. How do we recognise it? How about this? People do these kind of things. People make the same mistakes more than once because they didn't listen to an instruction or they didn't ask or they were too afraid to. That's a form of silence. There's little or no feedback. And when feedback is given, it isn't given effectively enough, whether it's positive or negative. It's a huge issue. One person does most of the talking. I recall an experience that I had recently where someone interrupted someone in the business and they turned around to them and said, "What, do you think you own this thing now?" What do you think happened in that leadership team? Silence. Don't argue with that person. There's not enough pushback. When your ideas are put on the table, there's not healthy debate about whether or not that's a great idea or not. That's how you get, "Oh, I could have told you that," or "I knew that." There's stonewalling. Yeah? What happens when people stonewall you inside of your organisation? And definitely they do not talk about the elephant in the room. And there's no challenging of ideas. How many of you said things like this? These are the indicators of silence. You hear about something when it's too late. Now, I'm going to do a little test with you. And for those of you who have been with us before, you know I like to test you and see whether or not you actually are listening. So you're going to rate yourselves now on a scale of 1 to 5. And the question is this: how corrosive is the silence in your organisation? 1 is, "No, everyone's really healthy. We tell each other everything. We debate it. We have healthy debates. We fight. There's no put downs. And we make great decisions." That's who we are. And 5 is, it's extremely corrosive. And the silence is alive and well. So on your little piece of paper, for those of you who are taking notes, write a number. Write the number down. Right now, write the number down. Don't overthink it. Just write the number down. Okay. How many of you scored 2 or more? Put your hand up. 2 or more. Okay, good. You've got a problem. Because you only need one person not telling you something for you to make some pretty big decisions that will cost you an enormous amount of time and energy. Now, so there is a problem. Yay! You know, the first step to actually solving any problem is to acknowledge that there is one, rather than to go into denial. So, before we go into anything else, let's talk about what is the impact in time, energy, and money on the business. What is the impact? And we're going to send you to a breakout room to have that as a discussion. Off you go. Welcome back. Gets a bit uncomfortable when we start looking at the impact of our behaviour, what we do and how we do it. So what is that impact or that corrosiveness of the silence? How many of you got this one on your list, that you've made decisions without the correct information? And I call that making decisions in a void. And when we do, anything could happen. The other thing is people become unhappy, right? And when people are unhappy, they make mistakes or they do less than adequate work because, well, no one listens to me here anyway, and they don't care. Now, here's what happens to unhappy people. They either quit and leave, or they quit and stay. How many of you know that you've got quit and stayers in your business? Yeah? People that are there that shouldn't be there, not because they're not great people, because they don't fit your culture and what you're trying to accomplish. And then we go silent and we don't say anything either. The quit and stayers cause massive problems inside of organisations. How many of you go and calculate the reworks inside? Do you want to get one of the biggest costs of silence? Reworks. How many things are people doing more than once? And they still can't get it accurate. I recall a situation, this is like 30 years ago when I first started in this business. And I was taken on a tour of the factory. And as I was standing, watching this huge piece of machinery get loaded onto the back of a trailer and being taken to the northwest of Western Australia from Newcastle. Let's not calculate how much it costs to take something that far. And as I was standing there, this young man said to me, "Oh, that'll be back in a couple of weeks." And I went, "What?" He said, "Oh, yeah, it's not quite right." And I said, "Well, why are you sending it?" "Oh, no, they don't listen, and so it'll just come back and we'll just redo it." In that organisation, when we ran our Leadership in Action program, all I measured for the entire program was reworks. How do you reduce reworks? They had a 23% rework. For those of you who can do the calculations in your head really fast, on a $120 million business, how much was that costing? And why were they fighting for profit? Because of reworks and because of silence. How many of you can relate to that one? Hey, I can see nodding of heads. So there's inside of the reworks, there is a lack of collaboration because there is silence. And as far as OC health and safety is concerned, silence can cause serious issues, serious injuries, because we don't speak up. I think you're hearing, I'm singing to the converted here, but get really uncomfortable about this. Stay with this conversation. Go into your organisation and go and hunt down where this is happening. And then later this morning, I'm going to give you some tools that you can use. But first of all, stay with it a little bit longer, because this truth, speaking this kind of truth into your organisation, will set you free. That's an old saying, hey? But let me tell you something. It will upset you first. And here's the challenge. Get really upset. Get very, very upset, because then you'll do something. If you do not get upset, my promise to you is in a year's time, it will still be the same. So what's the next part of our conversation? So you didn't come here to have me tell you how bad you are, hey? And you're sitting there going, "Well, come on, tell me what to do now, Jennifer. I'm sick and tired of all this bad news." Well, no. Stay with it. Stay with the impact. Stay with what we do as human beings. I could give you tips and tricks right now. Who's up for some tips and tricks? Yeah? You want a few tips and tricks? Okay, no, I'm not giving them to you. Not yet, right? Let's stay in the discomfort. Because if we stay in the discomfort, we'll do something. So if we can't stay with it, if we can't examine this, then we don't know what we're intervening on. Yeah, so we've got those two things now. You know, what now is the question I'm going to ask you is, what is at the root of the silence? So our next question, what is at the root? What causes this? Deep down. Off you go to your breakout rooms and have a chat about that one. So what is at the root of the silence? Let's first look at us as leaders. Here's what the research says. We fear feedback. We will not and we will avoid conversations where we do not have all the answers. If we don't have the answers, we shut it down. Dangerous. And then some of our people actually know better than us, and there cannot be a contribution to us. This is the research. We fear embarrassment and looking vulnerable at any level. The power of vulnerability. When a leader can admit they do not know, your people will rally behind you. Imagine that. When that brave woman, Rose, came into my office and courageously told me what she said, that was a gift. But here's the problem with us as leaders, and this is what the research says, is that we do not want to listen to people who report to us. We do not want, the research says, we do not want feedback from people who sit below us in the hierarchy of the organisation. We see it as less legitimate or accurate. So if someone who reports to us gives us feedback, we think, well, what would they know? No, you wouldn't think that, but I have. We find it more threatening when we get feedback from people who report to us. We see it as a threat to our power and our credibility. This is driven by our fears. Now, you've seen us put this one up before. It's everywhere. It's like an epidemic for leaders, that we fear it. And the acronym for fear, I didn't make this up, someone else did, but I think it's great. False evidence appearing real. We do not make it easy for people to say what needs to be said. We make complicated rules because we're afraid of the feedback. We suggest things like, oh, well, how many of you have this? How many of you have an open door policy? Come on. There you go, open door. Nonsense. As soon as you say that, right, as soon as those words come out of your mouth, that's a crock of stuff you just gave yourself. That's your get out of jail free card. Nah, I just took it away. Do not use those words. There's no such thing. Oh, we have an open door policy here. Anyone can come and talk to me. How many did? How many really did come and tell you the kind of things Rose said to me? That tells you how much fear is running in the organisation and that you set it up that way. So what do you want to do to mitigate the fear? So don't take on something huge right now. You know, pick something really little that you could go with, someone that you're pretty close to inside of your organisation, and invite them to give you some feedback about how you do it. And while they're doing it, you zip it. Remember this? Zip it. And the only thing you say to them is thank you. What's the words? Thank you. I appreciate what you just get. Now, when they close the door, you can cry, okay? That's what you can do. You go out the door and you can slide down the door like I did with Rose and cry and then get over yourself, right? Because really, I'm telling you, this is the key to leading, right? And then the other thing, what's at the root? Our fear. So that has huge. I could spend all day just on fear. But let's talk about we're too nice, right? And I made this acronym up about 27 years ago, 28 years ago. Nothing in me cares enough to tell you the truth. It's rampant in organisations. Now, how about this? When we're too nice and we don't say what needs to be said, who are we protecting? So we are the purveyors of silence as leaders. We sell it to everybody inside of the organisation. They all know the rules, don't say anything. So when I made this up, it was an experience that I had years before when I had a girlfriend who'd had a disastrous marriage And I knew the guy she was about to marry. And I said, how could this angel, this gorgeous woman, marry that man? And I said nothing. And then years later, she said to me, Jennifer, do you love me? And I go, yes. She said, not enough. That cut me. I have never forgotten it. And I have worked out so many different ways to say what needs to be said. How do I learn to fight and fight clean? Right? There's two drivers of silence, our fear and our too niceness and our inability to fight. Now, the biggest fight that you will ever have is the one you have with yourself, the one you're having with yourself right now. Oh, I can't say that. No, that's not okay. What would happen if I said that? I'll have HR down my back. Well, no, HR only exists right now because we as leaders don't say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. We are not a demonstration of good feedback to people. People hunger for it. So what are we going to do about it? If you create an environment where people can fight, and look at that second word in that slide, and they learn how to fight clean. Yeah? How do you fight? How? Clean. Because there always is a fight. That's my experience. So, enough now of all the terrible things about you and how you do it. Let's talk now about what do you need, who do you need to be, and what do you need to provide as a leader to get the feedback? So it starts with you, hey? No one else. You want it to be different? Start with you. So who do you need to be, and what do you need to provide for people in order for the feedback to come? Off you go. Have a chat in your rooms. So who do you need to be as a leader? Start with your level of vulnerability. What does it take to do that? Can you show people where you are stuck and where you struggle? Because if you do, you buy a loyalty to you and the organisation. They see you and you give them permission to do the same. You give them permission to say, I don't know, if you can say it. Then be empathetic. Can you bring empathy to a conversation? You know, I've heard so many leaders say funny things about empathy. I don't know, they've got it all confused. So do not get empathy confused with sympathy. We did a breakfast a few years ago before we started webinars on empathy versus sympathy. There's an ocean between these two things. Empathy is, I get what you're saying, I understand. That doesn't mean I agree. That doesn't mean I'm going to do what you want. It just means I heard you. Can you listen? And can you listen at different levels? Can you listen to the words that people are saying? Can you listen to the message that's behind the meta message? And can you listen for their emotional attachment to what they're saying? Can you listen at all levels? Because if you can, then they feel that they got gotten. This leader gets me. And listening is that. Can you listen with no defense? You know, people say some weird, I was going to swear then, some weird stuff to us sometimes, you know, and you sit there and you go, okay, okay, I hear it. And then you've got to take a breath and you've got to go, okay, I can be with this one. And when I really don't want to be. Right? And I have to keep bringing myself empathetically back to the conversation and go, okay, just listen, Jennifer, or whoever your name is. You know, I have to talk to myself. I don't know about you, but I do talk to myself while I'm going, just be quiet and shut up your head now, Jennifer. Just listen. right? And can you be consistent? You know, one of the most important things that your people require from you is for you to be consistent and predictable, because then they feel safe. I remember Alison, one of our leaders in our business, saying to a member of our team once, "Do you know if you ever had a come to Jesus conversation with you?" Well, she had a little prayer meeting. And she says, that's what she calls them. We're going to have a little prayer meeting. Come over here. Come to Jesus. Let's have a little talk, right? And, you know, it became a joke. But she said, if you haven't had one of those, you're not working hard enough, right? So how do you keep it light and serious all at the same time? The other thing is get responsible. Get responsible for what comes out of your mouth. Get responsible for what you say to people, and more than anything inside of this conversation, what you don't say. Clear up on your values. What are your personal values, and how do they align to the values of the organisation? Because if you have not done that work, you really want to. So I know for the clients in the room, when we've done your personal values with a distinction on you, you get a whole new take on your life. Now, you need to make it safe for people to talk to you. You want to break the silence? Then it starts with you and nobody else. Can you listen and not judge and not defend? Now, here's something that you can listen for inside of your organisation, and it is the place that you can go to break silence. If you can listen for these three things, then a whole bunch of things become available to you. Now, complaints can come in different forms. You know, how many of you have heard the complaints inside of your organisation? You know what they are, hey? And they're repeating themselves like an old broken record. You know, you don't get that nowadays, but, you know, I was brought up in the days of old records. They went, which means there was a scratch, right? So what does it take to listen for the complaint? Now, by the way, the complaint can also occur as gossip. How many of you have gossip in your business? Gossip is normally inside of a complaint. They don't know how to talk about it, so they just about it. And it's not that they are not committed to the business. They just don't know how to talk about it. So go on the hunt. What are they gossiping about? What are they complaining about? Because inside of that, when people gossip and complain, sitting underneath it is the worry that they have, or the concern that they have, that they cannot do what you gave them to do. They're worried about something, right? So this is how this conversation goes. You hear the complaint or the gossip, you go, what are you worried about? What are you concerned about here? And then you go, okay, so what is the thing that you think cannot get done if we do not solve this? And you'll find out what they're committed to. It's a great little conversation piece. You'll get fabulous feedback from them. So think of a common complaint inside of your business. Ask them what they're concerned about or worried about. And then you ask them, what do you think will not happen if this continues? And you will hear their commitment. So what do you think will not happen if this continues? So you want to break silence, go on the hunt for the gossip and the complaints, and listen to it with new ears. It's a piece of gold sitting there. And when you do this, remember that people inside are like you. They're marshmallows. They're soft and squishy, and they want to be loved, okay? So go really hard on the issue. What are they talking about? And go really soft on them as a person, like a fluffy cloud. You know how you can't touch clouds? You know, they're soft and they're fluffy and they're squishy and they look lovely in the sky. Treat them like that. Treat them how you'd like to be treated. You want to break the silence, you better learn the difference. Do not go hard on them. Go hard on the issue. What is the problem? Because when we do that, we offer them the opportunity to truly open up to us, and they will tell you everything that they're committed to, which is so amazing. Now, all of this sounds easy, hey? Yeah, I can do that. I can go around hunting out the complaints. I can do this. So it sounds easy. And it takes something to keep listening when people are complaining, because remember, their complaints are about a commitment that they have inside of the business that they cannot fulfill on. So go soft on them. Now, we have what's called the hard easy rule. So if you do what's hard, that if you go out and hunt out where the silence is greatest inside of your organisation, where what is going on is not being resolved, you keep seeing the same thing happening over and over, you'll need to have the hard conversations about it. And if you do that, it will get easy later. So it's the hard easy rule. You do what's hard now, it will get easy later. If you take the easy road, and some of you have in the past, whether you like me saying it or not, it has got hard now. You cannot break the silence. They do not believe that you will actually listen to them. So you be a demonstration of it. How many of you are hearing yourself in this conversation? I have sat on information over the years, and it has killed a lot of the things that I really was committed to. So I invite you, practice the hard, easy rule. You know, when you're about to walk past something and you go, oh, it doesn't matter. I did a whole webinar on it doesn't matter, right? Well, it matters, because it will matter sometime down the road. So what does it take to have this trickle down into your organisation? And who do you need to be in order for it to happen? People will say things to you as you start to do things differently. Well, you can't say that to me. Well, I am. Just know that if I cared enough earlier, I would have said it earlier. Let me share with you what I've just done. Remember that there are times right now that people will derail you. How many of you have had little goes, little forays in to breaking the silence, and then people kill you off? No, stand firm and be courageous. Remember my story of Rose. I am grateful to someone who came and said to me, you don't listen, and people don't come to you because you shut them down. Get to the heart of the matter inside of your organisation. Spend time. Go and look for your allies and say, please tell me the truth. And then you will be surprised about what will happen. How will you break the cycle? By creating a culture of radical transparency. Radical transparency and truth-saying. Are the truth-sayers silenced in your organisation? I've worked in so many organisations where the truth-sayer is silenced. Ensure that you do not make decisions in a void, because they cost the organisation. Be 100% responsible. If that is what's happening in your business, you caused it, whether you like hearing that or not. Now, if you want to have this trickle into your organisation, here's a couple of little things. Share what you've learned today with a few of your allies. Invite them to listen to this webinar when we post it in a few weeks' time. Discuss it with them. If they say, no, everything's lovely here, you know, like you go, oh, you know, I think we have a silence problem. No, we're great. Get really suspicious. And I have a new word. It's a suspicion. I suspect, and I'm highly suspicious, that that's actually not the truth, because people can't tell you. So if they kind of whitewash it, be careful, right? Because that means that the silence is rampant inside of the organisation. In closing, let me share this with you. I read this in a book 35, 40 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. And it's a quote by a man called Martin Niemöller. And Martin Niemöller was a priest during the time of the Second World War. And this is the quote in front of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he said this: first, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. As leaders, invite your people to speak for you, to tell you the truth, and you will build organisations and cultures that you will absolutely love and enjoy being inside of. Go and build that. Break the silence inside of your organisation. Thank you for being here today.